spoken to, they knew each other, they worked together, they found other things to them. So when it came time for the convention, it was very much that, hey Bob, can you use the church? Yeah, no problem. That's our connection, that's our unity, family, and the story. Even so much, even having a convention, the idea of having a convention, will come out of another convention, and of course that convention is about kind of cool moments. Bear with me for a second. The summer of 1840, we'll actually see the meeting of the two most famous women who organized this event. Lucretia Mott of Philadelphia, Quaker leader, traveled all across America giving speeches on behalf of abolition and slavery. And Elizabeth E. Stanton of Johnstown, New York, who famously would go on the Susan B. Anthony and suffrage fight. These two women will meet in the summer of 1840. Elizabeth E. Stanton about 25, Mott's about 40. They're going to meet at this event held in London, England, summer of 1840. So it's also called the first ever World's Anti-Slavery Convention. I can't stress how deeply unique this moment is. This is people from across the globe coming to London to debate how to end slavery, not just in America, but worldwide. That's pretty cool. That's pretty neat. That's pretty awesome. Early United Nations type idea. I'm the first to do that. But of course, it's not that easy. It's not that simple. America will send a delegation to the convention, about 50 people strong, but in our delegation will be 7 women. And when they get to the door of the World's Anti-Slavery Convention, what do you think happens? Invitation will say, gentlemen. Really, man, I love to make fun of the idea of gentlemen kicking the ladies out. Good job, well done. You figured out what a gentleman is, right? Yeah, that's obvious. Yeah. Now, and then to be on the other side, you have some real, true gentlemen in the American delegation. And so after Lucretia Mott, the other 6 women that she's with who are trying to delegates, after they get kicked out, they're not allowed to take their seats. Several of the men of the American delegation, as soon as the convention gets the gavel in the session, as soon as the gavel hits the table, they got hands in the air, go, hey, our entire group is not seated, and we're meeting a lot. And they'll derail the convention, they'll halt everything for a solid day, force this conversation about who gets to be a delegate, how, why, and all that stuff. Now, it's a day-long debate, so be careful what you wish for. Students on your college debate class. Day-long debate? Anyone? Got a good time? And it is. It's pretty bad. It's gentleman after gentleman taking the podium and saying, hey, they're each saying their own side. At the end of the day, the convention will vote, and they will determine that the women can stay, the women can participate, but they must sit in the back behind a curtain and listen to the men speak. They cannot speak for themselves, they cannot vote, but yay, they can sit back. Now, sitting in the crowd watching this whole show play off is Elizabeth Cady Stanton of Johnstown, New York. Elizabeth Cady Stanton is about 25 years old. She's not a delegate. The only reason she's being at the convention is her husband is a delegate. He was a part of the abolition effort. He's a kind of activist of an abolition society. I also find this funny. The other reason she's with them is they're on the honeymoon. They just got married here in New York and decided to go to World Anti-Slavery honeymoon. Anyone looking for a honeymoon destination? Falls, Vegas, Paris. But I do hope you can understand the emotion that Elizabeth is kind of going through there. She's at the coolest event that's ever happened on her honeymoon. There are lots of those high emotions. But instead of just being this super cool event, it sucks. It stinks. It's not supposed to be cool. These people are supposed to know better. And now out of this bad moment come a win. Through her husband, she will be introduced to Lucretia Mott, one of the leaders of the abolition movement. A hero. A person she knows about, she's read about, wants to know and see. So kind of eventually become a mentor of hers. Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott will wander the streets of London or walk home to the convention or something like that. And at some point during this time, Elizabeth Cady Stanton will turn to Lucretia Mott and say that when we return to America, we must do something for the rights of women. We must have convention. We must form a society, an organization to promote the cause. That's the understanding. That is 1840 when they meet. Our convention is not until 1848. That's a pretty big gap. Shamat, she returns to America. She was one point out. She was an abolitionist first, and then 20 years out from the Civil War. So that's what she's doing. Elizabeth takes in, she got married. She and her husband Will finished their honeymoon in London. It takes about 10 months. So good times. If you give them a 4 to 10 month honeymoon. When they return, they're going to do married couples do, their lives stuff organized. Henry does a job change, becomes a lawyer. They start practicing law in Boston. Elizabeth and him will start their family. But all that normal kind of thing. Summer of 1847, 1 year before our convention here, Elizabeth and Henry will move to Seneca Falls. That will be this area. Now, why they moved here is also challenging to answer. Elizabeth in a memoir gives a very specific reason. I find it funnier as a year. She writes that the reason they left Boston was because her husband had developed a cough, and the doctors will advise him to get away from the humid Atlantic air. Just 1847. Why they're really here? They're here because this is part of the greater Erie Canal corridor. Everything is going through this area, and this is the highway of America. So the river behind us is a maze of factories and mills, waterways, canals, water wheels. It's booming, it's rocking. And like so many Americans, we live in the West. That's where we need to go. They're following that usual tradition. The summer of 1847 is pretty rough for Elizabeth. Her 3 sons, when she gets here, will all contract malaria. She'll spend the first 3 months here in Seneca Falls, and then she'll be back. It's tough, it's challenging, and it's actuated by all the other issues that she's around. Everything changes the next year when we come back into her life with her old friend, Shamat, who come up to this part of New York to visit her sister, Martha Coffin Wright, our 3rd organizer of the convention, who lives in Auburn, just down the road. Like I said, Shamat is a pretty famous person. When famous people come to town, people know about it. They get together. I like to joke that she's Taylor Swift of the abolition. Like words, but can you imagine if Taylor Swift was going to stop at your house tomorrow? I'm sure one of you will do so. Somebody's going to do this, right? So Shamat comes to town, here with her sister, here visiting her sister. They know other people who migrated to this area, but he's migrated to this area. So the last 2 organizers of our convention are 2 women from Philadelphia, both Quakers, Mary Ann McClintock, Jane Hunt, they live just down the road from Waterloo. Jane Hunt will invite all 4 women to her house for the tea on July 9th of 1848. And at this tea party, Elizabeth Cady Stanton has a bit of a moment. She famously writes, "The torrent of my discontent pour forth such venomous indignation that I'll swear the party and myself to do and dare anything." It's a bit of a moment, but I'm sure many of us have that moment. Doing education, I'm sure some of you sat around the house playing that boss, playing that job. Unlike so many of us, I hope I don't quote, I know what's funny. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to make it better? What about that idea we had on Monday? Convention society. That was a great idea. Nope, we're going to do it. That night, the 5 women will draft up an invitation to a 2-day convention held here in Seneca Falls. It's a 2-day convention. The first day is exclusively for women. The second day will be open to all men and women both. Kind of amazing. They will select a date for the convention. The date for the convention will be July 19th and July 20th. The tea party will be July 9th. Quick. Why do they do it so fast? The Shamat is not good. And she's a celebrity. So you want people to come to the convention, let's have a celebrity there. That's somebody to come and see you. Finally, the purpose of the convention is to discuss the social, civil, and religious rights and conditions of the women of America. A few days later, Elizabeth Cady will be presented in confirmation from church, they'll put an article in the newspaper, and then on July 16th, 2 years later, she will meet with one of the other organizers to plan the event. Marianne from Flip-Flop is away from Philadelphia, who's been at the Tea Party with Jane Hunt. She had been involved with Krisha Mott and the Krisha Mott's Philadelphia female anti-slavery society back in the 30s. She knew a lot about organizing stuff. She'd been involved in a lot of things. She has 2 adult daughters, and so the 2 daughters, Elizabeth Kinney Stanton and Marianne and Flip-Flop, will all sit down to plan the convention on July 16th. I would want to point out, conveniently, the 2 daughters' names are Marianne and Elizabeth, so Marianne and Elizabeth convention. And the big thing that will come out of the planning is the writing of this cool document called the Declaration of Settlements. Largely inspired by common structure of the Declaration of Venice, but with a massive 2-word change to some of the most famous lines in America. Hold these truths to be self-evident with all men. Amen. I know you're all teachers and doing a lot of stuff, but if you have a minute tonight, please read through the Declaration of Settlements before you go to bed. I know you'll read some of it here. Just see how it sounds. See how it feels. See what's there. See what they talk about. All right. July 19th, July 20th, we have the 2-day convention right where you're sitting. Both days follow a somewhat similar pattern, but the first day is exclusively women, the second day, men and women. The mornings of both days is largely spent dealing with Declaration of Settlements. Elizabeth Kinney Stanton will read to the crowd, they'll go through it a second time, line by line, and workshop by on the second morning after we do this, they'll vote on it. Check it out. The middle of the day, they'll have a bunch of speeches. The first day is mostly Elizabeth Kinney Stanton and Krisha Mott. The second day, the 2 women will be joined by some of the men. And now in the afternoon, when the final little things are going to get missed in some of the stuff, Elizabeth Kinney Stanton has actually brought up some additions to the Declaration of Settlements, a series of resolutions. The easiest way to think about it, the Declaration of Settlement is really the complaints. He has done this, he has done that, and mankind has done this, making some time. But the resolutions are actually a series of kind of action items, lack of better word. Resolve, we're going to do this, this, and that. She wrote this on 10 of them, on 11th is added at the convention. On the first day, all she will do is read them to the crowd and introduce them. The second day, they'll actually go through the 11 resolutions one by one, open them up to debates, and then vote on the inclusion of each one individually. And one of the great ironies of the whole thing, 10 of the 11 resolutions will pass unanimously with no debates. One will not. Number 9 deals with a very specific question. A woman's right to It's pretty beautiful. Well, this is not beautiful. This is horrible. Look at Shemot. We'll tell Elizabeth Kinney Stanton earlier. Lizzie, do not do that. Her husband will tell her she's going to turn the whole thing into a farce. At the convention, she was an amazing support, and none other than Frederick Douglass. Douglass was personally invited to the convention. He spoke earlier today. But here was the remarks. Argue that the topics are the voters and elected leaders are elected leaders without it. You'll get Elizabeth Kinney Stanton so fired up, she will write with her shoulder her own speech, defending the idea together the 2 of them will carry it through the class. We will not be Finally, one last debate, who will or will we sign the Declaration of Settlements? We have a compromise, women will sign first, men will sign second. 68 women, 32 men, 100 people will submit the document. All this paperwork will then go with Frederick Douglass. Douglass at this point in his life is operating a newspaper out of Rochester, where he Star, and he also has a printing press. So he will take the Declaration of Settlements, the resolutions, the minutes, kind of a shortened version of the minutes that we'll have here, and the names, and then print up a small pamphlet called the Report on the Military Convention. That's very much almost immediately after the publication of a lot of this stuff, and they get into the newspapers, there will be quite a bit of pushback from the newspapers in America. But I would like to point out, it does not stop. 2 weeks after the first women's rights convention, we will second administration. Just up in Rochester, 600 to 1,000 people attendance, including the father, mother, and sister of the service supervisor. Who write it down and say, hey, she's involved in this. 2 years after the first Women's Rights Convention, we will have the first national convention held in Massachusetts. 11 states in attendance. It's on. It's happening. The movement will have a series of national conventions pretty much every year until the Civil War breaks out. After the Civil War, new efforts will be made. It's a much longer story, much longer is. There's going to be wins and losses and changes. Just to kind of put in perspective, in 1920, we will have an amendment to our U.S. Constitution guaranteeing the right to vote. That is a 72-year-long fight. It's staggeringly long. That's the understanding of the women who signed the Declaration of Sentiments back in 1848. The 68 women who signed that document. One is still alive. Charlotte Woodward is still elevated national